We're going to start our panel here soon. This panel is called Secular Government Bringing Believers into the Fold. What do I mean by this? Basically, this indicates the need to have believers on our side when it comes to fighting for secular government. First, let me introduce my panelists here. My first guest doesn't need much of an introduction, not on the end here, since he just played a lot of good songs for us over here. He's the co-president of FFRF. Welcome back, Dan Barker. Our next guest next to him is from Gettysburg and is a member of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community of York-Harrisburg. The Ahmadiyya community is the oldest Muslim community in the United States and categorically rejects terrorism in any form. They are also the only Islamic organization to endorse the separation of mosque and state. Our guest got his degree in hotel management in Germany and is currently involved in the retail and real estate business. Please welcome Lutfullah Salim. Next, we've heard from her this morning as well. She's the Chief of Staff of the Secular Coalition for America, which focuses on lobbying and advocating for secular issues at the federal and state level. Her talk earlier this morning gave us a good look at the problems that the SCA faces and the plans they have to combat them, including the state chapters, which I'm very excited about. Please welcome back Eliza Kashinsky. My next guest is the first female graduate of the Clergy Project, a nonprofit group that helps non-believing ministers transition from pulpit to real life. As a former minister, she also brings her experience to help us bridge the gap in understanding between the theist and atheist communities. Her coming out at American Atheist Convention was inspiring, as was her talk earlier this morning. Please welcome back Teresa Macbain. Our next guest, I'm sorry about that. Matthew Sayer. He is a professor at Lebanon Valley College in religion, and he agreed to join us today when one of our other guests backed out. So thank you for joining us today. Next to him, this guest comes from St. Stephen's Episcopal. No, wait. Oh my God, I'm getting the wrong one here. Never mind. Now we got it. Although our next guest comes from the Jewish tradition, he's now a volunteer activist for religious freedom and not a member of any particular religious faith. He founded Sands Associates, a national management consulting firm that provides consulting and training for nonprofit organizations. He's also the author of a few books in his area of expertise, including the Essential Nonprofit Fundraising Handbook and How to Manage an Effective Nonprofit Organization. He served as a volunteer for a number of interfaith groups, including the Religion and Society Center and the Interfaith Alliance PA. Please welcome to the panel, Mike Sand. Our next guest, right next to me here, is originally from North Carolina and studied religion and psychology at Shaw University in Raleigh, for which he received a master's degree. He served as chaplain for about a year in the PA House of Representatives in 1999. He has been an under-shepherd at the Second Baptist Church for 16 years, which is the oldest African-American church in Harrisburg. He currently serves as Director of Drug and Alcohol Services in Harrisburg and Director for Christian Love Ministries Incorporated that provides daycare services to underprivileged families. Please welcome Pastor A.J. Briley. Now let's get to the good stuff. First, the proposition. In order to successfully fight the battle of separation of church and state, we need to convince believers that secular government is as good an idea for them as it is for us. This panel will explore the possibilities of how to achieve this goal while avoiding the pitfalls of conflicting worldviews. This is not an attack on the tactics of groups putting out messages with other purposes, such as letting atheists know that they're not alone, but look at how to most successfully put forth the message of the benefits of a truly secular government to believers. It is also not the purpose of this panel to attack religion, but to work with people from the religious community to achieve these goals. Our first point of the discussion is exploring the proposition. How important is promoting the message that secular government protects both believers and non-believers alike? Let's start with Eliza on this, I think.
I mean, I would say that I think it's extremely important. If you look at politics, it's, you know, a lot of our politics, the majority of politics, who has the most numbers. While the number of non-theists is growing, we don't have 51% yet. If we can't ally with religious groups that agree with us on the specific issues, then we're not going to be able to get the numbers to get those issues passed.
Anybody else have anything to say about that? Are we all in agreement that we do need believers on our side to maintain secular government? Dan?
I think most believers in America do support the separation of church and state, whatever their religion is. It's only the extremists, the conservative right-wingers in any of these groups that are fighting that wonderful American principle. When we do our lawsuits, we are almost always joined by Jews, Catholics, Protestants, other believers who agree with us that it's good for the country and it's good for religion to keep state and church separate. So they are there, and we've taken lawsuits where we were surprised. 22 believers in some time would join up with us atheists to fight the government that was trying to impose religion. So those people are out there, and our real problem is not with most believers. Greg Boyd in Minnesota is a megachurch pastor who wrote a book, America's Not a Christian Nation. Church and state should be separate. We should use persuasion for Christianity, but not the force of government. So those people are there, and they join. We stood in Green Bay over the nativity scene over City Hall, and about 14 believers joined us. So I think most of them are already on our side. If we, you know, announce our purposes, they will join us.
You originally asked whether it was something that was valuable or important to both groups, and I think in a pluralistic society, the secular government is the best option we have for making sure that everyone is safe, that everyone has an opportunity to believe and practice what they believe as long as it doesn't hurt other people. So I think there's ways to nuance each element of that, but I think that's the most basic way that we can approach the sort of value of secular government for both believers and non-believers.
Is there anybody here that thinks that we can achieve this without believers on our side? On our own?
Even if there's only one of us, we have a Bill of Rights that protects the minority, no matter how small the minority is. So Jews, the Amish, the Jehovah's Witnesses, the atheists tend to take these lawsuits, and even if it's just one family, we can do it without them on our side because we have the law on our side.
I guess that leads in then, should we try to do it without the believers on our side? Does anybody think that's a good idea not to do it with the believers on our side?
Can I respond to the last one?
Sure.
I think I agree with you in principle. Unfortunately, we live in the real world where most of the people that are enacting laws are religious, and I don't think that most of them are prejudiced against non-believers. But if we think about the recent Supreme Court case that decided that religious law would trump human resources law, and that they could fire someone based on those rules, I think we should be more troubled. And I think thinking that we can do it without religious people on our side, without folks that think about government as a way to make sense out of everybody and create a safe space where we can all live together, it's not going to happen without a coalition.
I'll just say I agree that we should have them on our side, but even if we didn't, we could still win with the law on our side.
That's right.
So I think the consensus might be that even though Dan believes at least we can do it without the believers on our side, and I'm not sure if everybody agrees with that proposition, but I think we can all agree that it will go a lot faster and a lot easier. Is that what you were about to say, Eliza? If we had believers on our side. Okay, so we're talking about educating the believing public, basically. The word secular has been used many ways. I've seen it lately in attack ads for election campaigns as an evil word. secular meaning something bad or hateful, this secular government, this secular atheist. I think that a good number of Americans do not know what secular actually means. So when it comes to educating the believing public, how important is it to teach them exactly what that word means? How important is it to zero in on a definition of one particular word like that? Pastor?
Well, I must elaborate on that due to the fact that the word secular can have any variety of meanings. However, whenever you're using the word, you should use it within its context. I pondered whether to attend this session here today. However, I'm glad that I'm here. I came mostly to just get an opposite view, not so much being divided because of the way you believe. The word agnostic, the word atheist, you're speaking of a coalition of effort, of camaraderie. We must learn to define our words in this generation carefully so that people don't get or receive a misconnotation of thought. The word secular from a religious encounter means, as you alluded a moment ago, worldly, but it can expand far and beyond an interpretation of negativism. And not to be loquacious here, but I want to just expound somewhat in retrospect to a people, and every one of us that are assembled here are part of the human race. And being an intricate part of the human race, we must find a common denominator regardless to how one believes, so that we can unify ourselves as a part of humanity. I must say too that to expound on this word secularism in our world today, it has a misconnotation of thought because people have misinterpreted and not being told or learned in regard to the true meaning of such.
And I agree. I agree that the way we use the word secular here, when we're talking about secular, we're talking about secular in means of government, as our founding fathers intended, that a secular government is one free from the influence of religion. And it's not done that way to benefit one person over another or one religion over another. Secular to me means neutral. That's the definition that comes to my head every time I hear the word secular. It means neutral when it comes to government. Okay, and I think what the Reverend pointed out, Pastor, sorry, you prefer the word pastor, AJ. What AJ pointed out is, I think we can see that the word itself is misconstrued many times in the religious community about what it means, about what we're talking about when we're talking about secular.
Can I be contrary, perhaps cynical again?
Sure.
I think any particular worldview, it's impossible to be neutral. So when we say that secularity is a neutral perspective, that's, I think, a mistake. Just as if atheists don't have access to the world as it is, they don't have the truth, they have their own perspective. And I think when we want to engage in a pluralistic world, we need to realize that we are all coming from our own perspectives. If we value our own perspective as neutral, and everyone else as a deviation from that, then we're automatically thinking about our own view as privileged above everybody else's. And there's no way we can live in a diverse world if we start out from that perspective. I think it has to be about the second thing that you said. How can we have a government that's going to look out for everybody regardless of who they are? Does that make sense?
When I was saying neutral, I meant the government itself is neutral to its citizens in regard to its policies, its rights, its actions, regardless of religion or lack of religion. And that's where the neutral came from.
Right, no, and I think that makes sense. I think the tricky thing is that, just like secular, neutral can be interpreted in several different ways.
Well, to be clear now, to me, secular means neutral, nothing more, nothing less, as far as the government's concerned, okay? Most of us as atheists understand this, but from time to time we see it being used as an invective even. I think that part of educating the believing public is to educate them on what this word means, because they're being taught in their churches, their synagogues, their mosques, their households, that secular is an evil word. Secular means ungodly, and when it couldn't be further from the truth. You something to add, AJ?
Yes. Your statement, from the standpoint of my study, I have personally never, I've been in the ministry almost 40 years, and I have never used the word secular in a negative connotation of thought. Reason being because we all are part of the secular government at large. What the Constitution have tried to declare in regard to separation between church and state is that you have entities, and to have entities, that there must be some degree of understanding of how far you can go or whether you are to abstain. And I think basically where the lacking of that is that individuals that have a religious affiliation must gear themselves in study to get a realistic definition of such, so that we are not misguided by the media or some other organization or faith believing one thing over the reality of such, if that makes sense.
Yes, when I obviously did not mean that every church or every mosque or every religious household use the word that way, but there's no doubting that some do. I mean, we see it in advertisements on TV, we hear it on the radio, we see it in debates. We see politicians speaking the word as if it's something dirty. Teresa, you were most recently a minister before you were an atheist. How was that word perceived in your congregation?
Well, if you were here for my talk, let me just preface this by saying, you'll remember I said I wasn't a politician, right? So I'm just giving my opinion. Being a pastor for years, being in church ministry for many years, the word secular, maybe it wasn't portrayed as evil, but it was something that was outside. Our role as Christian believers was to fulfill God's commandments, to fulfill the Christian viewpoint and the Christian worldview, and to proclaim that and to promote that. So when you talk about secular government to someone that has been in the realm of influence that I have existed in, you're immediately putting them off, because secular government automatically stirs up not Christian government, not faith-influenced government. I mean, we won't even go as far as to following it so far out to the right where you have people saying that government is not possible apart from God, which, our Constitution, the founders of our country were religious men, some of them. Some were non-religious. But they had the maturity to put that aside in order to craft a document that would protect us all, as you stated, so that we would all come and be able to sit here on equal footing according to the law and exist and govern human affairs. And that's what we're after, so that one organization or one thought or one worldview isn't exalted above another. That's why our government is divided up into 3 branches, so there are checks and balances. So when getting back, of course, I'm a preacher, I like to talk a lot. When you throw that word out, secular, you put people off immediately. So the question in my mind is, how do we move beyond that? Do we need to rephrase our terminology? Do we need to be more vocal with things such as this event? Is it a blended learning experience? Is it, as Pastor said, a redefining of terms? I don't have the answers. I just have questions.
So in your mind, it could be either not only using a different word than secular, but maybe educating the public on better, believers better on what secular means when it comes to government? You think that those are like two sides of the same coin?
I would say so. In my experience, that word has to be redefined or clarified, not redefined, but clarified. Because as I said, 10 years ago, if you came to me, if Eliza came to me and I met her and she said that she is working for a secular government, she would be my enemy. Not because I hate her, not because I'm opposed to what she's presenting. I'm not even going to hear it, because secular means that which is outside of the realm of Christian. You know, there was a dividing line between the two. And it doesn't make people who are believers bad people. It just means that we have this gap that we have to try to bridge, so that the average person hears that word, doesn't immediately get put off. And you know, once a barrier is thrown up, once a wall is thrown up, it's hard to tear that down and to come to any kind of common ground.
Lutfullah, as a Muslim, I know the Ahmadiyya community promotes a separation of mosque and state, but does the term secular mean the same thing in the Muslim community as it does in the Christian community?
Absolutely. Before coming to United States, I was living in Pakistan, and being the member of a small religious community, which is the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, I was persecuted severely due to the fact that 97% of Pakistani population consists of either Shia Muslims or Sunni Muslims. And believe it or not, the law was passed in Pakistan National Assembly to announce us that we are non-Muslim. So not by any means, any government has right to impose on individual whether they believe or not believe, or what they believe and what they do not believe. That's why when I came to United States and I studied the Constitution and I studied the word secular, I was not alarmed. I was, as a matter of fact, pleased that there is such a government that do not care what is my belief. All they care that I perform according to the laws and live like a law-abiding citizen under the tenant. So that very pleases me very much. Also, let me give you another example of the gentleman who we believe. His name is Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian. He believed that he claimed that he is the Messiah of all mankind. And he wrote extensively, 84th book in his lifetime. In one of the book he wrote, and he praises to the British monarch, because at that time India was under the British rule. And he wrote that I praise to the British monarch that under their government I have this freedom and enjoy this freedom where I can express my belief very clearly to the all friends and the foes in the same manner that I could not have done while I was living in Medina or Mecca, which is the heart of Islam. They would not let me perform there, but I am very much pleased to say that I enjoyed that freedom under the monarchy of British. So same thing I find here in the United States, that as an Ahmadiyya Muslim community, we enjoy greatly the freedom of religion expression and religion belief. But as far as working together, I think I'm very much agreed with all the panelists that there is a room to work together where we can bring everyone on one fold. Word secular is confusing. Maybe the natural probably serves better. That's me.
Okay, thank you. Mike Sand, do you have an opinion on this as far as the Jewish community? I know you're no longer consider yourself a
I don't know
Jewish.
who wrote that, because I didn't write that.
You didn't write
No.
Well, somebody gave me some wrong information. How about you fill me in on, on what you do?
It's in the book. You can just read what I wrote. I don't know who added that sentence. It's in my bio, and it was printed word for word, and that sentence wasn't in any.
I apologize about that. There's a lot of emails flying back and forth, and I probably mixed one up.
Okay, first I was somebody different, so.
Okay.
No, I'm an interfaith person, and I belong to about 7 interfaith organizations. The question really is for us that we can all agree on working together, and that's the theme of your program, that the secular world and the religious world, to which I believe, and some of the panelists do, we can all work together. The question is how we're going to be able to do that. And my belief is a lot different, I think, than many of the others in this room. I have spent my whole life as a religious person supporting the rights of atheists and agnostics to believe. Carl Silverman and I are in a group together. We have significantly different views towards topics like God and prayer and things like that, but we work together on separation of church and state. We work together on denying him rights as everybody else. We fought for the Humanists when at a speech, the opening of the Senate, where they said, and Carl, correct me, they said everybody rise because the chaplain's going to say a prayer. And when Carl didn't rise, they physically, and this is in our state, 2 years ago, told him he had to leave and pulled him up and threw him out of the room. Not quite. You weren't welcome to sit, though. He was not welcome to sit. You just correct. Yeah, he did anyway, and we all worked for him. The question, though, is this: if we're going to have a deal and we're going to all work together, how are we going to do that? And my suggestion is, and again, it's not universally accepted, that I am quite willing to back away from any thoughts I had about people who aren't believers, and just absolutely support their rights and not to ever attack a non-believer, but I want that same respect. All right, so what I think we're going to have to do to work together is for the non-believer community to stop their opposition to organized religious groups. I think they're going to have to stop denigrating holy books. I get highly offended when somebody denigrates a holy book. I get highly offended when people put up billboards that denigrate religious people. I get upset when you wear Halloween costumes at times of the year other than Halloween, and attack religious views and religious people. So my suggestion is that if we're going to work together, which I think is the theme, and I think it's absolutely essential, that we have to stop baiting each other. And I have absolutely attacked religious people when they even breathe things like non-believers don't know what they're talking about or they're not a faith. I request the same thing from the non-believing community.
Well, what would you say to a different sort of alliance? A sort of alliance where we pick our one battle, like the definition of secular or what it means, or the education of the public on that word, and leave the other stuff by the wayside?
You mean don't do it? When you say leave it by the wayside?
Yes. Where we work together would be to a pure campaign of educating the public of what secular government is.
And then you're going to attack my religious views?
Well, individual groups and people are always going to have their opinions, and they're going to do that.
No, I think that's absolutely not going to work, and I think that you're whistling in the wind when you think that. If we're going to work together, and I'm going to support your rights, and I'm not going to attack your rights, and I'm not going to attack what you believe, because it's more important in this country that we work together. then you're going to have to stop attacking my beliefs. And to say on Tuesday you're going to work with me, and on Wednesday you're going to attack things in a Bible that I believe, I don't think it's going to work, and I suggest that that's not a good position to take.
Well, what I'm proposing is not attacking your beliefs, but attacking the political position. That there's differences.
The political position, we're the same. I agree with everybody in this room, separation of church and state. I believe in everybody having the rights to do. On the political position, we're the same. I'm talking about then not attacking a person's religious beliefs, not political beliefs. We're all the same for that one, I think.
Well, I hope you understand that the atheist, humanist, free thought, whatever everybody wants to call themselves, community, is full of different organizations, such as there are different churches that have different viewpoints.
That's right.
Everything. So that some may put out ads with their own goals in mind,
Right.
and others might work on other things.
What I'm suggesting is, if you're a leader in the atheist community and you really believe that it's important, that's the theme of this panel, it's important that we all work together for very, very important things, that you tell your adherents you're going to have to stop doing things that are annoying and disruptive of the values that we have. And I think you can't do that from the outside. I'm suggesting that from the inside, just like, okay, if I'm in a church and the church people go nuts and the church people say I'm against blacks or I'm against gays or I'm against other people, as a religious person, I stand right up in the church and say, no, you cannot be a bigot and have me in the same group with you. You cannot have hateful views and be in the same room with you. So no, I disagree. I think people inside the movement have to tell others, cool it. We're working together with these religious people. If you want to quietly have a beer and disagree with us, that's fine. I'm talking about public stances. I'm talking about members of your group that are going to announce that they're going to oppose what Muslims say, or they're going to speak out publicly against parts of the Bible that they don't like. That's the thing I'm talking about. And my argument is that if you want to work together as religious people, you're going to have to tell your own folk that they have to lay low on those kind of attacks.
Eliza?
So the Secular Coalition is a coalition. We work with all different kinds of groups. And I've heard it referred to a lot that the working in the non-theistic movement is like herding cats. That you can't always get the same goal in every place. But I think we need to work for the same goal where we can. I think that there are disagreements about what is appropriate dialogue and what isn't. And one of the things that's nice about the United States is we have a very broad freedom of speech, which means that we can, what is considered appropriate dialogue here is very different than what you see in lots of other countries. And so we definitely do want to have a debate that we can see as appropriate, but at the same time, I think a first step to that is building trust between the different groups. And that one of the ways you do that is by identifying the areas where you do agree. That, we may not agree about certain context of what's in the holy books or what we believe about God, but we do agree about certain things. Find what those things are and begin building that trust so that we know that we can work together even though we disagree.
Can I ask a question? Complaining about denigrating books like the Bible. When books like the Bible and the Hebrew Scriptures, like in Psalm 14, attack atheists, it says atheists are all corrupt. No atheist has ever done a good thing. Atheists are fools, the Bible says, and atheists are filthy. If I complain about that bigotry, can I be accused of denigrating the precious beliefs? Is that a denigration to complain about the bigotry aimed at us? A stereotype that is, I used to preach from the pulpit, atheists are fools. To complain about that immoral statement which unfairly attacks a whole group of people, is that denigrating a religious viewpoint?
Oh, it absolutely is. And if you take any holy book that we all can take, the Koran and the Gospels and the Hebrew Bible, and find things in there that are offensive, there's absolutely no doubt about that. The question is, the topic of this panel is, are we going to put those things aside and waste our time attacking something that was written 6,000 years ago that you don't like, or are we going to get together as Americans and support incredibly important things like working together? That's my position, that if you want to spend your time attacking a line in any Koran or any Bible, fine, but that's a waste of your time. What I'm asking you to do is to put that aside and join together, as we say, with things that we all agree on, like not saying anything evil about anybody's religion. That's my view.
I think what you have to understand, though, is that atheists throughout our past have had the same thing done to them tenfold over, every day, everywhere, by these same beliefs. And we're finally getting into a position and into groups now where we can do something about that, where we want to have a freedom of expression. Earlier I heard Timothy talking about hate the belief, love the believer. Is there no way to look past this on both sides? I mean, are we supposed to hold you responsible for the thousands and millions of Christians that came before you and who exist today and denigrate atheists every day?
Yeah, if you want to, and this will be my last thought on that, if you want to go to bat for all people who have been killed, go do that. You want to talk about the Ahmadiyyas who can't, as he said, go back to their land? Fine. You want to talk about 11 million innocent people getting killed in the Holocaust because of their religion? Fine. But to run around and just talk about, oh, woe is me, and to try to win the battle that because that atheists are attacked, rather than talking about the rights of everyone, I just think it's a bad political choice, that's all. I think you're wasting your time, and if you would all join together and talk about all peoples of all religions that have been murdered or killed, that would be a much better path to go.
AJ?
I like all that has been said, but there's an old saying, you can catch more flies with honey than you can with vinegar. If you want to talk about the wrong in this world, it would take an evolution to solidify the various differences. But where we are now is your time, my time, to make a difference. And we can do that by doing just what we are doing now, talking it out. To say that we all want to be in a mode of solidification after this panel is totally, highly preposterous and ludicrous. But I can say this wholeheartedly. I'm going to take what I received from this session today and move toward a more positive reaction to something positive than something carrying on a negative connotation of thought. I say wholeheartedly, we can do this if, Michael's saying that's a very provocative analysis. And the ideology behind it is you personally can make a difference, a small difference, because every effort that you make is going to be effective towards somebody else. To say that everybody in this world is going to love agape-like is absurd. But if we can get a nucleus of the people to rationalize that we are in an imperfect world, but we'll do our best in our tenure to make a positive differential.
So I read Mike's response as a sort of practical concern, and I want to add another practical concern. Eliza said, let's focus on what we have in common, what we can sort of agree on and move forward from there. And I think that's a great sentiment, but history tells us that's extremely dangerous. If we focus on just the lowest common denominator, we erase diversity. And whenever we erase diversity, the minority always loses out. That's exactly what has happened to atheists and agnostics and humanists for the last 200 years. Most religious people can believe in God. So we say the Pledge of Allegiance under God, and we have God on our money. If you look at the education system from early America till about 1950, the reason that we started taking God out of the school books is because they started watering down Christianity. Christianity permeated everything. You learned how to read by reading the Bible. You learned how to read by having biblical lessons. The reason that God was pulled out of the school books is because the watered-down version of Protestantism that showed up in the school books made the Protestants upset. They said, if we can't do it our way, we're going to pull all religion out. So now we have a secular society of people who are ignorant about religion at all. The numbers that show a religious literacy in America are dismal. If we want to talk to religious people, we need to understand them. But if we fall into the trap of focusing on similarities and erasing difference, erasing diversity, we're headed to another bad place. I think what we need to do is celebrate diversity. And I think the message I got from Mike was, let's disagree without being disagreeable. We can have, I think, your argument about what the Bible says something scary, but that conversation, I think, politically needs to be separate. I don't want to stop you having that conversation, and that's what I do with my students in class. We need to point out that these mistakes have been made so we don't make them again. But I think there's an interest, I wouldn't completely agree with Mike because we can't shut down that conversation. Because if we shut down the conversation, can't we all just get along, things aren't going to get any better.
Eliza?
I kind of lost a little bit of what I was going to say there, but kind of respond to that a little bit. I think, especially working for the Secular Coalition and with top of the panel, I'm very focused on sort of the governmental aspect of this, on policy aspects, as opposed to, I think, social aspects. But I think that every policy aspect also has a social aspect. That, for example, when we work on issues like the contraception mandate, we work with groups like Catholics for Choice. And so this both has a common policy goal, which allows us to get to know each other, and also it allows us to learn more about each other socially, to find out where we are different, and to discuss that in a way where it's more positive, I think.
And that totally makes sense to me. And something you just said made me think about a distinction that I think at least my students find very helpful when we think about this discussion about the government. We say America is a Christian nation. What do we mean by that? Clearly we're not politically a Christian nation, but demographically we are a Christian nation. And when you said that the political and the social, the policy and the social go together, I think that's the key where we need to make sure we're reminding ourselves that most of the people that are living under this policy are religious, that the people that are enacting this policy are religious, and that we need to sort of get at how we deal with it. We can't ignore the fact that they're religious and say, okay, when you come to the state building, leave your religion at home. I think that's unrealistic. Just like if I asked you to come to the state building and leave your atheism at home, that would be unacceptable. So we need to figure out a way to have that conversation without getting upset, and say things that are controversial and not get upset, and have other people say something controversial and say, well, that's nice, but I disagree with you, we need to work on this.
Okay, let's move along a little bit. A question I have mostly for the atheists in the room, because I don't know if the believers have noticed these as much. Some of the current advertisements, billboards, messages out there right now, do you think, let's see with a show of hands, do you think there are ones out there that work against the message of working for a secular government and working with believers? Do you think there's a way to separate the message that they're trying to put across from a message of educating believers in secular government, that we might be able to leave for example, David Silverman one time talked about his messages aren't out there for the believers. His messages are out there for other atheists, and his messages are out there for the news. So American Atheist often has very provocative ads out there, we can say the least. But can we craft an ad or an ad campaign aimed at simply educating the public on this issue of secular society without attacking the religion? To do it, and raise the hands again, if you think we can do that? Any of you on the panel here want to make a comment on that?
I'll say something quickly. We've had hundreds and hundreds of billboards all over the country on different topics. We try to be civil and attractive and sometimes cute, but it doesn't matter how much we would water them down. It doesn't matter how peaceful and gentle we would be. There's going to be people who are outraged at our billboards. For example, in Lubbock, Texas, we had John F. Kennedy's thing, I believe in America, where the separation of church and state is absolute. A wonderful concept from a Catholic, right? We thought, you know, this is good. This is informing people about the secular country. We got hate mail. We got death threats. We got ugly calls from people. So we don't try to provoke. We're not putting these billboards out to say to make people angry. We're trying to educate, but there's going to be religious extremists in every group. I think most believers are pretty sensible. I think most of them are in the middle and they're pretty tolerant, but there's always going to be those nuts in every group. So you can't win, you know. So we may as well find a good middle path, as long as we are respecting the freedom of believers, and as long as we're judging them as individuals, not based on their beliefs, but on their actions. Because I think we should speak out against immoral actions. For example, people who refuse medical treatment to their children because they think prayer will save. Well, all of us should complain about that. We should speak out about the immorality of that religious teaching. But in any event, all of our groups have a different style, a different flavor. We had billboards up at the political conventions that said, "God fixation won't fix this nation." A little bit of an edge to it, but it was cute enough. And so if you're going to spend good money on billboards, and they can be expensive, you want to get your money's worth. You want to be provocative to some degree without being, you know, over the top offensive to people.
Okay, we'll address that in a moment, but Pastor Briley has to leave for another commitment. Thank you for joining us. So Dan, let's talk about some of those billboards. God and government, a dangerous mix. Keep your religion out of politics. These for us are very, very mild. But how do the believers see these? How are those moderate believers accepting these? You said that we're always going to have the extremists. We're always going to have that fringe group, those outliers. So can we put that aside? Can we put those outliers aside? You know, just turn off the voicemail for a few days and concentrate on that moderate group to try to maybe craft a different message to educate them a little bit more on what you mean?
We do hear from believers who agree with us on our billboards and our ads. So they're out there. I mean, I think most believers are pretty sensible on this thing. So we often hear, and we get plaintiffs in some of our lawsuits who disagree with us philosophically, but they join us because they know that keeping state and church separate is good for the country and good for religion.
Anybody else have any comments on this?
I came to work at American Atheist right at the time frame when two big things that American Atheists were pursuing were coming up. Right about the time when the billboard campaign in Charlotte went up and then came back down. And those were very controversial billboards, which is keeping in the style of American Atheists. They're very controversial when it comes to trying to speak out and have a voice heard above just the common levels so that our voices can at least be counted. Now, does it get some attention? Yeah. Do you have to go on the news, which I had to go on Fox News, and I would never, ever in a million years want to do that again. Why would I want you to do that again? But the point being, you know, we each, as Dan said, we each have our little piece to play in this puzzle. Do we want to have, as the gentleman spoke a moment ago, this place to where we can all get along, we can all play in the sandbox well, we can effect this change through our corporation? Of course that's what we want. I mean, none of us would ever say that that's not what we want. Is that the reality now? No. Is it the reality maybe in 5 years? Well, that would be a great goal, wouldn't it? But probably not. So what do? We're down in the trenches, we're trying to fight, we're trying to reach this level. You know, we're a part of the secular coalition. We speak out in the way that our organization speaks out. FFRF speaks out. They share some billboard campaigns, they take cases, they take lawsuits fighting for separation of church and state. Secular Coalition tries to pool us all together and unify us under a common goal. And then those of us who, I was formerly us, those in the faith, hey, it's only been 6 months, give me a break. Within the faith-based community, we do want to work together, we do want to see change. It's just at this point in time, we have to accept the reality of it. One good example, and then I will put my microphone down, is the World Trade Center cross case. Have you guys heard of this? Something American Atheist has taken on. This case is about, at its core, and you may not know this actually as a group of atheists gathered here, at its core it's about the fact that one religious group has been allowed to erect a monument in a museum, which is a Christian cross, and almost 1,000 people have been refused the right to do that. That's what the core of the case is about. Yet what do you hear on the news? We want to take the cross out, right? That's what it's all about. That's what I went on Fox News about and tried to make my point, and of course I don't think I made my point. So how do you get that message across? Sometimes you have to scream. And how many of your parents, there has to be more than one, because I know some of your kids were running around here. Have you been able to rationalize with your child at times and get a message across? Yeah. I was able to rationalize at least twice with my children. Have you ever had to employ some type of other device to try to get them, I mean, I won't say that you had to bribe them with money to clean their room, but if, you've done those kinds of things as well. Have you ever had to really just get down and say, look, you're going to do this, get an emphatic message across? I won't say that you were yelling at your child, because none of us would ever do that, right?
I do.
Yes, you do. It's somewhat the same, and I know that's kind of just a little rudimentary example, but sometimes in order to be heard, in every movement who has ever fought for any type of, any minority movement who's fought for equal rights, there has had to be an element that shouted. There has had to be moments when there were billboards, someone like ours, Dan. I know you've got one up now that's getting some interesting comments in regard to same-sex marriage, right?
Yeah.
I think I saw that. Yeah, somewhere in the United States.
A rainbow on banned marriage between church and state.
Banned marriage between church and state. See, great, clever idea. We have a new one that's addressing the same issue. And we're going to get a lot of love mail from it. So, anyway, I promised I would put the microphone out after that, so thank you.
So, we've just talked about groups that have had to shout before they're heard. I'm sure we know the civil rights movement, we need our Malcolm X's and we need our MLKs. In the LGBT movement, we need our drag queens and parades and in the face of the television cameras, and we need our calm, respectable people as far as the rest of the community is concerned, talking about common sense.
Did you just equate American Atheists to drag queens? Not that there's anything wrong with that. I just thought that was quite humorous. Maybe he was giving that one to you, Dan. I don't know.
I'll try it. I'll try anything.
So we have some of our screamers, we have some of our yellers, we have American Atheists probably as our loudest among the national organizations. I'd say FFRF probably comes in a close second. Although I don't know if I call them shouters or not, but they're very vigilant when it comes to law cases. Thousands of letters are sent out each year, I believe, and the cases that actually make it to lawsuits are few in number compared to those letters, I believe. Is that true, True, Dan?
Yeah, we sent out about 1,600 letters this year already. And we only have about 12 or 13 lawsuits,
So that message is getting through. Now the message I wanted to talk about with this is the message of secular government, is the message of bringing believers into the fold, to the same conclusion that secular government works for them. So as we have different types of messages and different types of advertisements in other areas, should we not have different types of messages and different aims in our community, in our organizations? An example of communication. Let's talk about framing. Okay, how we frame a message is very important to the person or group that you're asking the question or trying to get the message to. Is how you frame that question. Some popular methods of framing just don't work, as we've seen. Very simple atheist ads can get very adverse reactions because we don't know what the other side is thinking. So one of the common things that we have in framing is Jefferson's wall of separation. Okay, this wall of separation has been a battle cry for a long time. Does the mental imagery of a wall between us and our government help or hurt the understanding of secular government by believers? Or may there be a better way to frame that analogy that secular government protects us all?
we're stuck with it. He said it. It's part of our history, so it's part of our jurisprudence. But maybe there are better phrases.
One of the main reasons I have with that analogy, I don't disagree with that analogy. One of the main reasons I have when it comes to educating secular government is that a wall reinforces the idea of in-group, out-group stereotypes. When you a mental image of a wall, it automatically thinks they're on one side, we're on the other. And for believers who think that belief should be part of government, I think it puts them on the side of the wall with the government and us away. So might there be alternative analogies that might work better, such as a protective barrier perhaps that protects us all equally, that shows believers that they're protected from government, government's protected from them, the religions are protected from each other.
I think there's several problems with the wall analogy, and what you said earlier made me sort of think about that. I mean, the first issue is, on the surface, there isn't any government without people, right? The government is people. So to think that there's some people that are in there doing it and some people that aren't. In a democracy, we all participate by voting. So I think at the surface, but I think the second thing, what you said about sort of, it feels like an attack, it feels like you're sticking me on the outside. I think that's what we need to sort of break down. Anything that implies a separation is going to have that same problem. I think we need to come up with an analogy that thinks holistically, thinks sort of integratedly, that we're all working together. What about a team? Each of us has a different role. The quarterback does one thing and the running back does something else. That if we think about those different roles, instead of separating, I think that would help with Mike's, well, let's figure out what we're going to, the offense is, everyone's going to do their part this time, and we're just going to move the ball, right? If you're talking about getting the message out there. The other thing you said is, would it be better, or should we have a unified front? I think the question is sort of often a little, we're going to not have a united front no matter what, because you can't get 10 people together without having at least 3 opinions. Should we have it? Sure, it would be nice, but it's not going to happen. So I think working on marketing, working on how to get that out there and have more conversations like this one, where folks can talk to someone and go, oh, atheists aren't rapists? Oh, okay, I can actually talk to a rapist and know that's okay. Or, religious people aren't going to be proselytizing the whole time I'm talking to them. Anytime we can get folks together and break down those boundaries. I had a psychology professor in my undergraduate who taught for 6 weeks, and then we got around to sexuality. And she said, oh, by the way, we've been talking about homosexuality and heterosexuality. How many people are sort of still weirded by that and don't know any gay people? And a couple of people raised their hand tentatively, and she said, well, now you do, because I'm gay. That they're breaking down that boundary and realizing, you know, when I tell my students I'm an atheist, there's a couple that don't believe it, and there's a couple that sort of shut down and stop listening. But most people gradually, oh, you mean an atheist isn't going to be attacking me the whole time I'm talking to them? I think if we can break down that boundary, getting that message out is going to be a lot easier.
Okay, we have time for one more. Dan, I think you put
I'll
your
say
hand
it
first
quick.
there,
I think you wanted to say something too, no? Why don't you go ahead?
because we're going to close up here soon.
I was going to say very quickly that when you talk about the impact of the words, you talk about can we work together all the time, that even if we can only work together on some of the time on some of the issues, it amplifies the voice when we can work together. If we have a bunch of groups that we know disagree on all kinds of things, and they all get together to say, no, this one thing is a problem, or we need to change this one thing, that makes that statement so much more powerful. And so I think we need to think as well about what we see as the most important things that we do want to work on together.
Can I just say real fast, I think the wall is a great analogy. The wall is not separating people from people, it's separating institutions from institutions, the wall between church and state. Just like the separation of powers separates the judicial from the executive, we don't think it's separating people from people. Jefferson's metaphor was talking about the institution of the church separate from the institution of the government, realizing that people are in both of those things.
So instead of reframing that analogy, you would educate people better about that analogy.
Yes, and I agree. Let's find one thing we agree on. This is going to be my plea. We all agree in the Constitution of the United States, and very clearly, they didn't put it the 19th Amendment, they put it the very first one. And then we had a great American, Martin Luther King, who said the same thing. Let's get together just on one thing, on doing people from what they do. So we get the atheists together and we say we're not going to discriminate against black people because of their color of their skins. We're not going to discriminate against gay people. We're not going to discriminate against atheists. That's the one thing we've been challenged. I think it would be incredibly powerful of all of us good guys who believe just that one thing, and then you can put up your billboards. I do. Got together just on one thing, that we're going to judge each other in our country because of the contribution we make to the country, period. And let's all work on that thing. If it takes us 10 years or 100 years or 400 years, fine. Let's work on that one thing that Martin Luther King stood for. Thank you.
I find it very interesting discussion. I think we need to have more of these dialogues where we can understand each other's position and respect each other more. I think today I learned a lot, and just coming here, I was just a little skeptical that, you know, I'm going to a group which is non-believers that probably will be not very friendly. But you are as friendly as any other group, so I am very, very comfortable. There is a room to improve our relationship, and I hope that we work together, and there will be issues where we will be all going for one goal, and we can achieve at least that goal.
All right. And that concludes our talk here. I'd like to thank all our guests for taking part in this panel. I think everybody had some good contributions on here. Dinner will be served at 5 o'clock for those who purchase tickets here. Anybody who wishes to